Nibiru the Primal Being is a new hand trap that can be obtained in the newest Selection Box Mini number 6. It has the effect of during the main phase, if your opponent normal or special summoned 5 or more monsters this turn, you can as a quick effect tribute all face-up monsters on the field, including yours and your opponent's, and special summon this card from your hand, and then special summon a token to your opponent's field that has the combined attack and defense of the tributed monsters, and also it is a hard once per turn. So let's talk about the pros and cons about this hand trap. One of the pros is that, it's a hand trap, so you can use it during your opponent's first turn even if you go second. It's also a really good board wipe, which just gets rid of all of your opponent's monsters and not just negates an effect like Effect Failure. It also doesn't destroy, and it does not target, so it gets around all sorts of protection and also graveyard effects when they are destroyed. For example, the Unchained stuff cannot activate their pop effects because they are not destroyed, they are tributed. And also, Nibiru is just a very big guy that you can summon for free, which you can use to either attack your opponent because it has a really big attack value of 3k, or you can just use it as a material for a link summon. For the cons, this card is pretty much only good going second because it also tributes your own monsters, and you probably don't want to do that. So this is pretty much only good if you go second and your opponent sets up a board so you can tribute their board before you summon your own monsters, but if you go first, you risk losing your entire field as well. And another thing is that it gives your opponent a really big token, which you will need to get rid of eventually. And some decks are just not very good at getting rid of a big token, and that might not be a good idea to play Nibiru in your deck. And also your opponent needs to summon 5 times, and not every deck, especially in Duel Links, summons 5 times. In a TCG, a lot of decks summon 5 times because TCG is a lot more advanced format where a lot of decks can special summon and combo a lot more than in Duel Links. But because of the presence of skills in Duel Links, a lot of decks like Blue Eyes or Sacred Beast can very much not summon 5 times. They can just normal summon a big guy and just set back row and pass, and Nibiru will do nothing against those decks. And also, some skills don't even let you use Nibiru because Nibiru is a hand trap that requires it to be special summoned. So skills that lock you from special summoning other than their specific archetypes will not let you use Nibiru. Okay, so let's have a look at decks that it is good and bad against. Basically, the decks that it is good against are decks that combo a lot, summon a lot of monsters, and don't really put up a lot of negates. So decks like Borrowlink is a really good example. Their turn 1 board contains a summon negate, but it is a inherent special summon negate in the form of Borrowload Riot Dragon, which does not negate Nibiru because Nibiru is a effect special summon. Some decks that it's bad against include Blue Eyes, because that deck doesn't really special summon or normal summon a lot. Sacred Beast can play around it by not summoning that much. And decks like Shadows can also go through their combo without summoning 5 times. Okay, so let's say you've gotten a copy of Nibiru. How do you use it? Well, this card is pretty easy to use as far as hand traps go. For Effect Veiler and Ghost Mourner, you kind of have to time your activations correctly in response to different decks so that you negate their biggest choke point so that you stop their entire combo. But for Nibiru, it's pretty simple as far as hand traps go in Duel Links specifically, because unlike in the TCG, a lot of decks don't have access to monster negates, so you don't have to really preemptively use it before they set up their board. You can just wait until the end of their main phase, and the game will ask you if you want to activate anything before they leave their main phase, and that is when you will be able to fire your Nibiru and just clear the entire board. And for very specific decks in Duel Links that do have access to monster negates, decks like Synchro Summoning decks that can make Crystal Wing, you will be wanting to preemptively use it before they can make the negate. So for example, if your opponent has 2 monsters, 1 Synchro and 1 Tuner that add up to level 8, you will want to Nibiru before they Synchro Summon, because once they make the Crystal Wing, they will be able to negate your Nibiru. Let's talk about how to counter Nibiru. Nibiru is a tough one because it is a hand trap, which means you either have to negate it or you have to play around it. You cannot kind of remove it from the field like you could with Bad Crow or monsters that have quick effects. So one way to play around it is to make a negate on the 5th summon, which is really unlikely in Duel Links. It is how you usually play around Nibiru in the TCG, but in the format of Duel Links, it is very difficult for a lot of decks to do that. So the more realistic option is to not summon 5 times, which a lot of decks can actually do. Decks like Blue Eyes, Sacred Beast, Unchained, Shadows, those can very easily combo without using all 5 of their summons. As long as you summon only 4 times at maximum, you can play around Nibiru, and your board will be safe. Or you can just play a deck that plays a lot of heavy back row, so even if you do summon 5 times, you will still not lose the game immediately because you will still have some amount of back row to protect yourself from your opponent's turn. And finally, let's talk about how many copies of Nibiru should you get. I don't think it is a mandatory hand trap or a mandatory staple. You could play the game without it and it's still going to be okay, but if you do decide to get it, 1 copy is probably enough because you will not want to have more than 1 copies of this card in your hand because it is a hard once per turn, and also once you use 1 copy, you will be setting up your board during your next turn, and the second one will be a lot less good because you already have your own board which you will be tributing if you use your second Nibiru. So 1 copy is optimal, but 2 copies is also reasonable, so you can open it more frequently, but do not get 3 copies, it is just way too bricky. So yeah, comment down if you think I missed anything, and okay, bye!